everybody. Welcome to Improv FAQ at Length. This is a series of longer conversations about improv topics that have lots of questions surrounding them. I'm James Quesada.
And I'm Bob Wick.
And the topic for this episode is going to be about having constructive talks as a troupe or a team.
Yeah.
And I suppose we can talk about it in a couple ways. I was thinking mostly about it as like after a show, picking each other's brains about moves you made or how the show went, and talking with each other to kind of debrief about the show.
Yeah.
Is that how you were thinking about it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think these conversations are important, and if they're done in the right way, it can be very helpful.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess for me, the thing that comes to mind with constructive group conversation is that in my experience, I have been on some troupes that we just don't rehearse, and I guess that's a whole nother conversation. But I think that if you're not going to rehearse, then it becomes more important to make sure that you're talking, but talking in a healthy way. Because if you have conversations after the show, it can easily devolve into just like ego or passive aggression and people storming off and being like whatever. But it can also be a really valuable substitute for rehearsals, and it's like a really great way to grow if you can do it effectively.
Well, yes, and to even before you start, you have to be in a group that you respect and trust each other before you would have these conversations. I would recommend having these conversations to someone who's still in a training program or who just got started, like someone who hasn't had that much stage time, or because you're still kind of vulnerable in what your voice is. You know, these are kind of the kind of conversations you should have after you feel more comfortable on stage. You get your stage legs, and and you can take a critique without it totally pushing over your house of cards. It should be like helpful, and just realize that anybody that no, and also I guess what I'm trying to say is also, like, don't go out and give your opinion or give unsolicited notes. I think that should be like,
to me that's a big defining factor of a healthy constructive conversation with a group, is that, like, don't give notes. Like, that's not really the point of it. Or at least in my experience, what I've found to be most effective is to ask honest questions. Like, even if that's just the rule, is like, nobody lead with an explanation of anything or a comment on somebody else. You can say what you liked or say what you thought was lacking, but even that's a dangerous territory sometimes. I think ask honest questions of each other and give honest answers. And with the assumption that nobody is on the attack and nobody needs to defend themselves. Like, just have a conversation out of real curiosity and
absolutely
share what your perspective was in the moments throughout the show.
Absolutely, because you're all a team, and you get to a point when you do rehearse, you're not rehearsing to become like a better improviser per se. You're rehearsing to become a better communicator, not just to the audience, but to your fellow performers. So this is part of it. If you can communicate like, hey, or if you have a note about or a suggestion how you can all communicate better, or even ask a question like, if you made a move and it got dropped somehow, maybe your move wasn't clear. So asking questions like, hey, in that one scene about the dog owner, I was trying to do this. Was that clear? Because I felt it was clear, but would there have been something? Could there have been something I could have done to make it clearer?
Yeah.
Asking those kind of questions rather than, hey, why didn't you pick up that gift? I just handed it to you and you dropped the ball. Where were you, Frank?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think again, it's just it's tricky territory because even saying something
Right.
like, "Hey, was I not clear enough in what I was trying to do there?" Like, can
Well,
sound
when you say it
passive
like that,
aggressive.
like,
Yeah,
hey,
exactly.
was that a...
But you know what I mean? Like it's
I know,
tough
yeah.
to even make sure that your intentions are like I don't know. It can be a very vulnerable, especially if the show didn't go well, vulnerable,
Right.
touchy spot after the show. I think, but again, it's like go into the conversation assuming that nobody is on the attack, nobody needs to defend themselves, and if you give that an earnest belief, then
Right.
things being misconstrued like that is probably less of an issue. And then I could, you know, you also want to keep things positive. What are your thoughts on like the balance between like positive and constructive criticism? It's like most people. I guess I can't say most people. I know I'm somebody who comes off stage, and even if the show went well, I'm like, ooh, that was awesome. Okay, I would have loved, man, if we did this like one thing or like we almost got back to the one
Right.
scene or something. You know, I'm always thinking of like how to get from 95% to 100. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so what are your thoughts on like having a conversation between balancing those positive, constructive?
Well, I completely agree. Like, you have to give a lot of positive. And honestly, my opinion in that specific situation, I would have just, let's have tonight. Let's just enjoy this moment. We performed black magic and it worked. We summoned all the spirits of comedy and we're good to go. And then maybe bring up the 5% later. Like, oh, I've been thinking about this, because uh, you don't want to have that every time we have a talk. Like, it gets to the point where people feel as if they have to contribute, and if
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
trying
yeah.
to get that nitpicky, it can do some harm to the group as well. So it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I always like it's something that Gary always talks about is like your note session shouldn't be longer than the show.
Yes.
And really it probably shouldn't even be as like near the length of the show. Like it should probably be
Right.
half the amount of time that you spend on stage talking about it, like, 15 minutes max, to just put a cap. Because I also think that like when like you said, when you get to that point and you're like you really start digging for stuff and unpacking things in detail,
Yeah.
and it's like if you didn't remember it right away coming off stage, it probably wasn't that big a deal. That's also how I
Right.
like to do notes. If I ever take notes on a group, if it's in rehearsal, I will take notes, written notes. But if I go to like watch a show, if a group I'm coaching is having a show or somebody asks me to give notes afterward, I will just try to watch as an audience member, because to me that's what the performance is. It's like if there's something, I already have a director's mind and or a coach's mind, so it's like I have already more of a critical outlook. I shouldn't double down on that as an audience member
Absolutely.
to bury myself in the writing. That's how I feel about it, and I find it more, I guess, like when I go to talk and give notes, that I'm like, okay, the things that really mattered are going to stay with me from the time that I leave my seat to go talk to the group, and the things that don't are not going to come up. And if somebody else in the group brings it up, hope it's probably going to be something that I'll remember once they bring it up. But
Right.
it's just a good like gauge for me of like what actually matters.
Yeah. When I used to take notes, they used to be so detailed. I would lose. I'd be taking such great notes about one scene that I would miss the following scene because, like, oh, and this could have happened. I now, thank God, time and experience. It's yeah. I pretty much follow that direction you're following. Is I just write like, oh, this is what I would name the scene, and if I have something like, oh, well, make sure you're listening or whatever we're working on. But also, like, going back to what we were talking about, the positive stuff, if there's a student I'm working with who has, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like has I want to say a flaw, but has like a recurring bad habit.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like if they did something to adjust on stage to help him, fix that bad habit, I'm going to make sure I write that down. Just like, hey man, I saw that you almost asked a question, but you didn't. Good job, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's probably a good rule too. Is
Right.
like just limiting to the amount of time so that you don't start really digging into stuff that
Absolutely.
didn't come to mind initially. And then yeah, going back to like the positive and constructive balance. We in New York, I think it's pretty common to like do one good thing after the show. It's just to kind of like cool down, and no matter how the show went, it's just like stay positive and whatever.
Yep.
I think part of that is also because it's much more of like a mixed bag of people. The communities aren't as like tight knit in some of the theaters, so like you're still warming up to each other, and it's a good thing to be positive. But I also think that it would be nice to like if I were to start doing shows again tomorrow, I would suggest that like let's do one positive thing each. Everyone name one positive thing that they liked about the show, but let's also ask one question each if you got it. And again, on the stipulation that like an honest question, no one's on the attack, no one has to defend themselves, but just pick each other's brains. I think that's so valuable to do. And the
Yeah.
reverse with the positive is like you were saying, is like it can just seem insincere even if the show went well. It's like it can just kind of feel kind of like wonky to be like, we'll go around and say 8 or 9 good things about the show. Like we don't need to be like,
Yeah.
we don't always need to cradle ourselves after
It's like having your mom tell you you're handsome. You have to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a good practice. It's nice. I think it'd be nice to balance it. That's all.
No, I agree. And something else I really enjoy, and one of my favorite things to do with a newer group, but who are kind of comfortable with each other, to complement that before the show, everybody give each other one goal. It doesn't have to be hard. Like if hey, I know you're an analytical player. Try to play a weird character. Or hey, you told me that you are playing high status. Next time we're in the scene, play low status. I'll take care of you. Like just something established. Something just a fun exercise to mix it up a little bit when you're on stage.
Yeah, especially if you're feeling like kind of stagnant, or like you've been working on a form for a while and you feel burnt out on it, like, and it's starting to frustrate you or whatever. Like, yeah, do a montage, go round robin and give each other fun challenges. And I think it can be stuff like that. Like you say that you feel like you're having a habit of playing high status, maybe play the opposite. But it can also be, I think, stuff I've seen troops do things like, or maybe we did it. I did a set where we all just went around and were like, you like use the word kerfuffle,
Oh yeah.
just little like secret dares or challenges or whatever, bullshit things like that can also just liven up the fun and whatnot. And again, make it like a secret language between the group,
which is also a really cool bonding experience. Like I got you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it is. I love the way that you phrase it as being at a certain point, it's not about getting better at improv; it's about getting better at communicating.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's such an important process too, of like letting go of be either whether it's beating yourself up or like having an ego about like, well, I did well, carrying your asses, like whatever your thing is. Everybody has some kind of hang up that it's good to like humble and chip away at that and just be honest in conversation before and after the show.
Well, I also like how you phrase it as asking questions. because one of my thoughts and something I like to do is if I'm playing with a newer troupe, but full of people who are established, who, like people I respect, but I don't get to know them very well. Like when you go to a festival and you get kind of put in the grab bag or whatever.
Yeah.
If we have a rehearsal or something and someone's doing a scene and I want to do like a walk on, or like I had something like, oh, this could be fun, but I'm not sure if this is their taste, And the way I play, like if I have something like that, it burns in my soul. Like I just want it, like, oh, I got this. If I truly think it's good, it hurts sometimes. So like even to chill that out while I'm on stage, I just tell myself, well, I'll ask them about it later, and then maybe a conversation like, hey, during the scene, I had a thought, and you can just be honest with me. Would this have screwed up what you had going? Let me know. And you know what? It goes 50-50. Some people are like, yeah, I had my rhythm going that could have messed me up. Or I'm not like, oh my God, that would have been a cool idea. And you never know if they're just being polite or whatever, but I tend to take people on their word. And like, okay, well, next time we play, if it happens, cool. Now I know. Like that's a way of establishing communication and boundaries.
Yeah. And it's good. It's good to just to know where people's heads are at.
Right.
And what their tastes are for moves.
Yeah.
And because also when you ask that question, then they know where your head's at. Like that
Right.
if you make an impulsive move, they might recognize it a little bit more readily because you had that conversation.
Absolutely. And plus they know you're sincere about it. Like, oh, this is not a person who just walks on all willy-nilly. This is someone who actually thinks about it before they put their right foot forward. Yeah.
And I don't know if I've told this story on here before, in one of like the Q&A episodes or something, but in one of my first troops, I was playing with Ryan Parmenter, and Ryan is so funny, so smart. He just makes like very smart and like abstract. He just gets like very layered, multidimensional stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
So being a newer improviser, he's somebody that I really, really enjoyed watching. And when I started playing with him, I would get like really nervous or intimidated about like whether I was keeping up or understanding what his moves were. And one time we were in a show and he made this tag edit, and I don't know, we were like it was a scene in a cafe, and then he took my character, tagged out my scene partner took my character somewhere else and was like pointing at things on the menu and naming all these. I don't know what it was, but I didn't understand it, and I kind of froze up in that scene, and I was like, blah blah blah. And then after the show, I was like, hey dude, sorry that I kind of like had a big pause or didn't know how to play what you were going for. Like what did you have in mind when you made that edit? And he was like, oh God, I have no clue. The scene needed an edit, and I didn't think it was over, but it needed to go somewhere else. So I just jumped in and took you somewhere else. And that changed my whole outlook on what people have in mind, and like reading the intentions of your partners of just like, one, thank God I asked, because it totally disarmed what I was previously intimidated by.
Right.
And then secondly, then I knew that you don't always have something in mind, and you don't always have to.
Yeah, sometimes a move is just a move.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it was great. It was like, oh yes, that's right. It's improv. You can just kind of like figure it out, take the leap, and figure it out as you go.
Yeah. So what would you tell a student who has these questions and doesn't feel comfortable yet talking to the rest of the troupe or classmates?
Yeah, I would say, and we probably should have been pretty clear about this at the beginning. We touched on it, but like, one, if you are a student, you should be relying on your teacher for notes, and until you gain a good amount of experience, and you'll know when you're there, you should be working with a coach whenever possible.
Right.
So that would be my answer to like a student coming up is like, just don't do it. It's not worth it. Like, again, you can kind of ask questions, but like, definitely don't give notes. And, it's not necessary for you to pick each other's brains while you're still learning in a structured, class program.
Right.
Like you can rely on the facilitation of people and get a coach and blah blah blah. So that should be pretty clear. This is more like if you've been doing it for a while and you're on your like third or fourth group or like third or fourth year of improv and you've done a good amount of shows, and you're like you either don't have the time or the real interest in heavy rehearsals, then you can kind of shift over this way.
Yeah. And that being said, also, if you're a student, don't take notes from other students.
Yeah.
Don't let people tell you how to do your improv unless you paid them to tell you how to do your improv.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Because I've been at the bar and I've overheard a couple of conversations where I was like, whoa. You guys started this at the same time. Cool.
Yeah.
Don't listen to this guy. I don't know.
Yeah, and I've been in the position where I was trying to like captain and coach teams that I was in while I was coming up, and it's like, fortunately, I don't think I ever got myself in real trouble with it. But looking back, I'm like, I was playing with fire by like being in the troop and trying to like give direction and stuff and playing, at the same time. It's like, it's not a desirable position to be in, and it kind of reduces your ability to do any of those roles if you're trying to do them both at the same time. What are there experiences that you've had where it's not worked out, that you would be like, when should you just be like, let's not have talks anymore until we take a breath? You know what I mean? Like
yeah. One of my first troops, a couple of those situations came up where it was this we were both people in the argument were too green to agree to disagree. Mm-hmm. And it was just a matter of difference of opinions of philosophy. And it does happen, and a couple of beers later we're fine, but you have to realize when people are up there, everybody's doing their best, everybody's playing at some range of vulnerability. So you giving a note could be something that strikes a chord that either person involved in the conversation didn't know was a chord. So you kind of gotta be careful. So that's why the general rule is don't give other performers in your troupe a note unless asked. But that being said, like, you get to a point where if you don't have a coach because of the reasons you said before, and you trust somebody, like, I don't think Joey and Travis are worried about giving each other notes. They've known each other for 300 years, and it's fine.
Yeah, their friendship is solid.
But take either one of those people and put them in a new situation with a new person. That there's a different. It's all about relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. What about conversations that groups should have, like about like comfort zones and stuff? Constructive conversations. Like if you're a new troupe, what are some of the conversations that you would recommend that a troupe has?
Well, I think that if you're a new troupe, and are we talking about someone who's established or still kind of green?
Let's say like a launch group, like first house team style, and like sometimes you have a conversation about like what makes you laugh, and there's also stuff like who's okay with being picked up and in stage combat or whatever. Like, what are some of those conversations that you would recommend a new troupe has?
Well, anything about physicality, because you don't know, someone could have got into a bad skateboard accident when they were 10, and like, I can't lift anybody up, so please don't try to jump in my arms or anything. Like, all those conversations should be had at the beginning. If there's any, I don't know, any sensitive areas that topics of conversation that may be rather conversation for everybody else but you, because something that happened in your life or for whatever reason. You don't need to justify it. People have different feelings about different things.
It's like no fly zones or whatnot.
Yeah, no fly zone. I love that. Yes. Yeah. Those conversations.
Yeah, those are two important ones. I'm glad you brought up the like physical. It's not just comfort, but like injury safety, like protection of like, having a bum knee, or if you just, I dislocated my shoulder yesterday.
You're right.
Then that's something that you should definitely know about. That's great. I think another one I do really like the topic of like what makes you laugh. What do you like to play? Man, I'm trying to remember in the conversation we had with Isaac, where he was like, he had a conversation with his troupe, and the one player was like,
I want to become a completely different improviser. Yeah.
From today forward, I want to just clean slate to be the new me and full license to improvise completely differently than I was before.
I love that story so much.
Yeah, because this is the thing is that for students that like start their first team, as you're growing and making like substantial growth, it's easy to get to like feel like you fall into the same habits with the same people. So I think conversations like that about like one at the outset, what sort of stuff do you want to play with? What do you love? Do you love form? Do you love sci-fi? Do you love really grounded, nuanced, almost like dramedy style stuff? And then also having that same conversation at 6-month marks when you're together. That's a long time to be together. Your interests and tastes are going to change.
Well, ideally, you would enjoy each other's company enough where you have daily conversations, or at least a couple times a week, so you can keep up. If that's not the case, I honestly, one of my favorite warm-ups is to just go have dinner with somebody before I perform with them. Like, what is going on in your life? Let's just talk about it, because they might reveal to you this week's no-fly zone, or like they might tell a funny story, or they might be into something this week that they weren't previously, and we can play with that a little bit more.
Yeah, and also just warming up to people by going out and hanging out is the best way to build trust and a rapport enough to ask the types of questions that we're talking about in constructive conversations. And I never used to be the type of person that preferred to do those kind of outings until I got to New York. And I don't know, because like getting started at Go Comedy and getting on a house team there,
right?
I was fine being like two things. One, I think maybe because I was trying to be around as much as possible, I felt a little bit more like comfortable, and I was building a home base out of the theater, and so it felt I didn't feel out of place, and so like I also didn't feel weird warming up to new team members or anything like that. I think that was a big part of it. But then also, I don't know. When in New York, I just kind of realized that like, I feel like a fish out of water in entering a new community, and I don't know everyone, and so option to either rehearse or hang out. Hang out would be a little more, and actually, so now I remember the second thing from being at Go is that like at that time in my life, I also felt like I learned more about people by improvising with them, and I think that to an extent that is true, but I think there's a little bit more. People have a little bit more of a guard or a wall up in New York, at least in my experience in those two communities, because people have specific goals and ambitions and stuff related to entertainment, and I think that like it's some people are like let's do it this way or get out of the way, and some other people are like look, I don't care what the thing is, I'm gonna wreak havoc and make mischief because I don't really care. You know, so people just have like more specific agendas, I think coming into it, for better or worse, and in New York, and so I think kind of chipping away at that and learning each other felt more important to me in that setting.
I would also imagine like you're in a new city with new people, going out with the new people in the new city, you get to double down. Like, well, where's a good place to get a slice? Cool, we're going over here. I've never been here. Because that's what I know about New York. You're always getting a slice. That's it. There's one food.
It's the first thing that I always sneak into the conversation. Oh, cool. Where are you from? And where do you get a slice around here? Yeah. But yeah, no, that is true. Is like I'm still also making friends and learning the neighborhood, especially in the first year or so. Right. And even now, like 3 years in, is like still making friends and getting comfortable with people. Yeah, is there like when you go out and you have a hangout, do you try to have like would you, I guess I'm just curious for you personally, would you prefer to have like kind of icebreaker style structured get to know you, or just kind of like shoot the shit and feel each other out?
Honestly, shoot the shit. I think coming from a big family, it's like my go-to is to feed people. Like it's like, hey, this is how we connect. We sit down, we break bread, we just talk. And you know, if we can come up with a conversation, fine. Because I think especially during a dinner conversation, you're in that you're kind of looking to connect. Like, oh, this is the topic of conversation. Do I have a story or something interesting to add to that? So it's you're meeting the person halfway, and so I just always enjoyed that kind of, you know. And I also I do enjoy it more when it's like 20% bits, 80% real talk, compared to the other way where it can be, you know, like, oh, we're all improvisers, time to get wacky over some pizza, because I guess I'm hungry for pizza right now.
Man, go get a slice.
We're gonna get a slice, man.
No, that makes sense though. I understand the because when you approach conversation like that, it is a lot like improv, of just like kind of throwing out offers and kind of like starting for. I've always hated chit chat, or like what do you call it, small talk, where it's like about the weather. And I think that the what I didn't really understand up until real adulthood is that like that is an icebreaker. It's like you just start there and kind of like build your way out. You just kind of like, it's the same thing with like sports talk or whatever. Like, you like the Lakers? It's like the person probably doesn't actually care. Like maybe they want to talk about it, but like they're just trying to give you a stimulus, you know, to get you talking and then be like, see where it goes. And I think that is very much an improv thing, but I'm terrible at that kind of small talk. And so I prefer the kind of like structured icebreaker thing, at least at first, just to give everyone like equal opportunity to, but that's probably like do that in rehearsal and then go out and chit chat.
Yeah. And then when you're chit-chatting, when you're talking, don't talk about the rehearsal. You know, like you already had that. You already shared that experience. Like talk about experience you haven't shared. Yeah. And if there's anything Anything that connects you to each other, you two to each other. Talking. Because again, the more comfortable you are with each other, the more you can do on stage, the more conversations you can have, the stronger the notes you can give, and it just all progresses into like this really cool thing where it is a really strong learning experience, because there are things about yourself you can't see because you can't see them from the inside. You have to get it out. You have to outsource that.
Yeah, outsource it.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I think that covers it pretty well. I mean,
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my main.
So if you had to like make like rules, like just to put a button on this, like what are the rules for having a good conversation post show? Like, let's say there are 5.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah. So I guess the recap would be ask honest questions and give honest answers. Number 2, assume no one's on the attack and no one needs to defend themselves. And if it's not clear what I mean by that, it's like if you don't have an answer for someone's question, like you don't have to make one up or apologize. That's what it is. I'm going to change it.
Right.
No one's on the attack and no one has to apologize.
Right.
Like people aren't asking you questions because they think you did something wrong. They just want to know what you had in mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Third would be keep it to half the length of your set.
That's a great one.
I think that's what.
Thanks, Gary.
And I don't know. What do you think? If we had to put 5 on it, what would it be like?
If you are giving advice of any kind, make sure it was asked of you.
Yeah. That goes back to asking questions. Like I think that's rule number.
Okay. Well, then make sure when you're asking questions that the question you're asking will benefit everybody in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's probably a good rule in there about like when you at what point are you okay to start having these kind of conversations without a director or a coach.
Well,
don't do it with your first team.
If you're not comfortable, ask your coach and have them deliver. Or maybe coach you saw something and you were wrong, and the coach can. Who knows?
Definitely. Yeah. It's not really a substitute. It's a poor man's substitute for having a coach is to have these kind of conversations, but I think it is beneficial.
Oh, absolutely.
And then I would say like you do it after you've had at least one troop experience. I don't think that it's wise to do this kind of thing as your first troop experience.
Right.
So I don't know what that is. That's a soft 5 or 6 rules.
Yeah.
And in summation.
Yeah, I don't even call them rules, like strong suggestions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Thanks everyone for joining. And you can find us on our YouTube channel or Facebook at Improv FAQ. You can also find us on podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. We have all of our episodes. The most up-to-date and current stuff, complete archive is going to be YouTube, but otherwise you can find us on podcasts as well. Or you can email us at improvfaq@gmail.com to make recommendations. Thanks again. We'll catch you next time on Improv FAQ at length. Well, nice. I got to get the timing right for...
I think you pretty much stuck the landing. You pretty much... You can have a couple notes at the end.